Hilchos Pesulei Hamukdashin Perek Shishi, the laws of disqualified sacrificed entities, chapter 6. Today is a very, very special day in the Rambam study cycle. And that is because it's the day that the 3 chapters and the 1 chapter overlap. Those that study 3 chapters of Rambam every day, they finish the cycle every year. Those that study 1 chapter a day finish the cycle every 3 years. So if you think about it, on the first day of the first cycle, both paths meet up, because we learn the first part of the introduction while they learn the whole introduction. On the last day of the end of the 3rd year, we both learn the last chapter. But where's the middle point? At the middle day of the middle cycle, that's today. So anybody studying 3 chapters of Rambam today is studying chapter 5, 6, and 7. So already on this day they get ahead of us. But at least for chapter 6, we overlap. So today you have the ultimate achdus, the ultimate unity of Jewish people, because anybody studying Rambam is studying this chapter. And the Rebbe in 1988, I believe, he said, look what the first halacha of this chapter which unites all Jewish people, gives us a message about the Jewish people and their importance. And it has to do with the laws of taruvos. Taruvos means mixtures. We had a couple of chapters about this when we learned about kosher and non-kosher. Because there you have to know what happens if a kosher piece of meat mixes with non-kosher pieces of meat, or meat and milk, different levels of mixtures. With kadashim, with sacrifices, animals, you also have the same laws, because different sacrifices have different laws, so you have to know what happens if a holy animal mixes with unholy animals, or holy animals of one category mix with other holy animals of a different category. That's today's chapter about taruvos, mixtures within sacrifices. But the first law states, halacha aleph, kol hazvachim, any sacrifice, shenis ariv bohem, achas mechatoyes hamesois oisher haniskal, that got mixed into them, one of these sin offerings which is supposed to die, as we saw 2 days ago, or the ox that's supposed to die. That's the ox that kills a human being. If an ox kills a person, the ox is put to death. Both the chatoyes hamesois and the sher haniskal, you cannot derive any benefit from them. So what happens if they fall in, or they walk in, to a mixture of animals that are meant to be brought on the mizbeach as proper sacrifices? Afilu echad beriboy, even if it's 1 in 10,000, kulon yamusu, they all have to die. Unlike, let's say, regular cases of kosher, non-kosher, we have some cardinal principles of bittul b'shishim, right? 1 in 60 is nullified, sometimes 1 in 100, 1 in 200. Here, when you're talking about live animals, if even one problematic live animal walks into a herd of 10,000 times itself, the whole herd is in doubt, and all the animals have to die. Lefisha ba'alei chayim chashuvin hein, ve'einan b'teilim. Because live animals have an extra level of importance, they don't become cancelled. On the other hand, v'im hikriv hurtza, if you offer them, they will have achieved their atonement. She'ein ba'alei chayim nitchin. Because live animals also cannot become rejected. So on the initial stance, they never become cancelled, but even after the fact, they never become rejected. Says the Rebbe, a wonderful message. Who's called chayim? Who in the Torah is called alive? Jewish people. It says, "Va'atem hadveikim ba'Hashem Elokechem chayim kulchem hayom." You are the ones who cleave, who stick to Hashem your God, therefore you are all alive today. So what's the message, what's the inner message of this piece of Rambam? That Ba'alei Chayim, Jewish people, as long as we hang on to the source of our life, we can never become cancelled. Never. We can never fully become rejected. A Jew, even if he sins, is still a pure Jew. The Jewish eternity, the Jewish survival always is. And that's the first halacha that both chapters, 3 chapters, 1 chapter, learn together on this day. A wonderful message of Abbas Yisrael to appreciate another Jew connected to the source of life. We can never become batel, we can never become cancelled. Anyway, let's continue with the laws of mixtures. Halacha base. Nis'ariv bahen echad me'isuri hamizbeach. If into the herd got intermingled a category of animal that would be forbidden to the altar. For example, it's too young, or it was sacrificed or meant to be sacrificed to idol worship, or it was exchanged for a dog, or one of those things that we learned in the other set of laws over there. So then, Yiru kulam yipel bahen mum, all the animals have to wait till they get a blemish. V'yimachru, then they'll be sold. V'yavi b'dmei hayafesh bahen. And then you use the worth of the choicest animal to bring a sacrifice from the same category of sacrifice which got mixed in. So whatever the pile, if they were all sin offerings or burnt offerings, that's what you bring using the price point of the most choice animal, because that might have been the one meant for the sacrifice. Halacha Gimel, nisarvu kadashim b'chulin tamimim. If sacrifices got mixed into regular animals that were unblemished, which could technically, if you chose to, be brought as a sacrifice. So what do? Yimachru hachulin shebata'aruvas. All the regular animals in the mixture should be sold litzarchei oisei hamin, for the needs of that type of sacrifice that got mixed in. V'yikru v'kulam, and they all get offered. What does that mean? They all get offered. Ketzat. What does that look like practically? Arba behemes shlamim shenisarvu ba'arba behemes chulin tamimim. Okay, the Rambam gives this scenario. You have 8 animals. 4 are designated to be peace offerings, and they walk into another 4 animals that are just regular. So now you have 8 animals, and you don't know which are the peace offerings and which are not. Yimachru ha'arba shel chulin lemisha hu tzarich lahavi shlamim. Sell the 4 regular ones. Now you don't know which ones they are, but you can sell them still, the value, to somebody who needs to bring a peace offering, and we'll soon see what you do with them exactly. V'yikrivu hakil shlamim, and you bring them all as peace offerings. Take them all to the temple. You know, in this mixture of 8, 4 of them belong to you. Your friend knows 4 of them belong to him. You sacrifice all 8. Same thing for burnt offerings, guilt offerings, same scenario. The money which he uses to purchase those animals are totally chulin, because the animals were actually chulin. He just bought them because of the doubtful issue that you had. But the money is totally chulin, totally fine. Halacha dalet, nisarev sher hekdesh b'shvarim shel choil. If it wasn't an equal to equal, wasn't 4 to 4. You have 1 ox that's holy, gets mixed into a bunch of oxen that are mundane, regular. Gadol shebekulan hekdesh. So because you're in doubt, you must give the biggest to Hashem. The biggest ox, the greatest ox, is going to be considered holy, v'yimachru hashar letzarchei oisei hamin, and the rest should still be sold to those who need that type of sacrifice. And now, we're going to be talking about many, many types of sacrifices. I kind of lifted this chart from one of the Rambams that I used to prepare. In Mifal Mishnah Torah, they made it in black and white. I kind of made it just colorful. And basically, there's about 9 different types of sacrifices that can possibly get mixed into each other. So the Rambam begins with a general rule. Nisarvu kadashim b'kadashim min b'minay. If sacrifices get mixed into other sacrifices, and they're of the same type, so sin offerings with sin offerings, guilt offerings with guilt offerings, burnt offerings with burnt offerings, peace with peace, thanksgiving with thanksgiving, all the different categories we have over here. What you do is, really, you don't have an issue in the actual animals. You know they both have to be brought as this type of sacrifice. You just don't know which one belongs to who. So what you do is, Zeh yikarev l'shem bailav, v'zeh yikarev l'shem bailav, afal pi she'ein kol echad mehen makir karbanei. You bring each one with the intent that you're doing it for its owner, even if the owner itself doesn't know which one is his. Now you can only do that by medvarim amurim b'karbanes nashim she'ein bahem smicha. You can only do that for women's sacrifices where there's no leaning. So they can just say, this is my sacrifice, that's my sacrifice. Avol karbanes anoshim, but if it's a male that's bringing the sacrifice, since every individual needs to lean on his sacrifice, and you don't know whose is whose, you cannot offer this mixture till each one conceptually or legally hands off the rights of their sacrifice to their friend, or you wait till everything gets a blemish, and you can sell them, and then each one at the higher price point brings a sacrifice. They'll lose a little money that way, because you have to say, maybe the bigger one was my animal, so I have to pay the bigger price. And that's what you do with mixtures of the same type. That would be the yellow category. Halacha hey, nisarvu min b'she'enei minai. If you have now cross mixtures, 2 different types of sacrifices got mixed up. This is the example that Rambam picks over here. This square a burnt offering and a peace offering get mixed, lo yikrevu afilu kachamura shabahem. You cannot offer them both, even if you offer them at the stricter level, she'ein mevi'in kadashim lebeis hapsul, because we don't want to cause, you're not allowed to cause sacrifices to become disqualified. In other words, if it's a let's say burnt offering, right? If you're going to offer both as a burnt offering, now you're losing the chance to eat the peace offering. If you're going to bring them as a peace offering, you're not offering the burnt offering in its proper way. So you end up with problems either way. And so because of that issue, we don't offer either sacrifice. So we'll see. Halacha vav, ukashem she'ein mematin bizman achilasan. The same way you can't cause a lessening in the time frame of eating the sacrifice, kach ein mematin ba'ichlea, and you cannot cause a decrease in who can eat it, v'lei b'mkayim achilasan, or in the placement of eating it. Right? Certain sacrifices you can only eat in the temple. Others you can eat in the whole of Jerusalem. If you're going to make them both stricter, now you're taking one away from a larger opportunity of space and people. So what do you do with this mixture? Yiru hakola chiyipal behenmum. You follow the general principle. You have them graze till they get a blemish. V'yimacher kol echad mihen levadei, sell each one alone. V'yavi bidmei hayafe shebahen mimin zeh, ubidmei hayafe shebahen mimin ha'acher. You have to use the higher price point to bring one, let's say, burnt offering, one peace offering. The yafsid hamoiser mibeisa, and you're going to have to lose the extra from your home. If one animal only fetches $200 and the other animal fetches $500, you have to spend $500 twice. Because maybe that was the burnt offering, maybe that was the peace offering. So you'll lose the extra $300 from your house. Halacha zayin, afal pi shekvar hikriv, oila shechayav ba, oishlamim shechayav la'akrivon. Even if at that point you already took care of it differently, like, you know what, forget this mixture, I'm going to offer my own burnt offering, my own peace offering. You already took care of your obligation. You must, from this mixture, take care of it. You have a mixture of burnt and peace. So you must make sure to offer another burnt offering, another peace offering. Doesn't make a difference. If a sin offering gets mixed with a peace offering, so the initial law is the same. Have them all graze till they get a blemish. And you use the higher price point to buy both a peace offering and a sin offering. However, the next scenario doesn't apply to a chatas. If by the time you take care of the mixture, you've already taken care of your sin offering by bringing a different sin offering, kulon yamusu. Now the whole mixture has to die. Because one of the chatoyes hamesas that we saw in chapter 4 is if an owner uses a different sin offering and then gets back his original sin offering, that one has to die. So unlike by the peace offering and the burnt offering, if you already took care of the mixture, you have to bring another one of this mixture. But with sin offering, once you took care of your sin offering, whatever remains attached to the sin offering has to die. Same thing if you mix the money set aside for a sin offering and the money set aside for a guilt offering, what do? You just take two animals that are unholy, and you announce, this is a pile of money. Whichever money belonged to the sin offering should transfer to this animal. Whichever money belonged to the guilt offering should transfer to this animal. And if you already brought your sin offering, you must take all the money to be destroyed. Because again, you used something else for your atonement. The original money has to be destroyed, as I saw yesterday. If your guilt offering was already offered, it all goes to the donation boxes for voluntary burnt offerings. If a thanksgiving offering got mixed with its exchange, one of the laws of sacrifices is tmura. You cannot exchange your sacrifice. But if you did, there's a penalty, they both become holy. So now you have a thanksgiving offering, you tried to exchange it, so this also became holy. Now you have two animals that are holy for thanksgiving offering, and they get mixed up. You forget which one is the original one and which is the exchange. You offer them both, and you can wave the bread that comes along with thanksgiving offering together with them. Or if a thanksgiving offering mixes with any other sacrifice. Even though you've already offered your thanksgiving offering, you have them all graze till they get a blemish. And the higher price point, you buy a thanksgiving offering and the other sacrifice, whatever it was, that got mixed in. If a thanksgiving offering got mixed with the Nazarite's ram, which is pretty much the same category of sacrifice, except that one has more bread than the other, Shteim tikravna v'yanif alechem yimam. Just bring them both and wave the bread that belongs to them together with them and you'll be fine. Yud beis b'cher shenis'arev b'pesach. Firstborn offering that gets mixed with the Passover offering. Shneim yiru ad sheyipel behem mum. Since they both pretty much have the same laws in terms of eating, so you can let them both graze till they get a blemish, v'ye'achlu kibcher, and eat them like a firstborn. As we'll see with firstborn offerings, if it gets a blemish, it has a certain level of holiness and you just eat it. You don't have to offer it. So as long as you let them both get a blemish, you can eat them both and treat them with the holiness of firstborn. Why don't you offer them? Because the Passover sacrifice, anybody can eat it, but only till midnight. Firstborn offering, not everybody can eat it, only Kohanes, but has more time to eat, 2 days. And based on the rules we said before, you cannot purposely disqualify sacrifice nor decrease the amount of time of eating. This would violate it if you would offer them both as one or the other. Tie the animals. Every year, right, you take your animals into a pen, you mark every 10th one, you bring it as a sacrifice. That gets mixed up with your Passover sacrifice. Wait till they get a blemish and treat them both like tied animals. If firstborn and tied animals got mixed up, they should be eaten in their state of blemish. See, Bechir and Meiser have a special pink column. They're their own laws. If they get mixed in with any other sacrifice, you wait till they get a blemish, and you eat them, no need to sell them, you eat them, treat them with the holiness of Bechir or Meiser. If a guilt offering gets mixed with a peace offering, even though technically they're both the same, because only the inside parts get sacrificed, the rest of the meat is eaten, you cannot offer them. You have to wait till they get a blemish. You bring the higher price point, a guilt offering and a peace offering, the difference you have to pay for from your own house. And the reason you cannot bring them both, obviously, is because the same principle. The asham can only be eaten for a day and a night. The shlamim you have 2 days. So you're lessening the amount of eaters and time frame of eating. If you go ahead and bring your guilt offering from a different animal, then both animals in this mixture need to fall towards voluntary burnt offerings. Now says the Rambam a rule. Just a good way to remember it. All sacrifices, it's possible for them to mix one type with the other, chutz min hachatos im ha'asham, except for a sin offering and a guilt offering. Those two are both for sins, so they're technically the same type, but they actually can't get mixed. It's impossible to get lost or confused between a sin offering and a guilt offering. Why? Because of the gender of the animal. She'ein ha'asham ela mizichrei kvasim, the guilt offering can only be a male sheep, and if you're offering a sheep as a sin offering, it can only be a female. So they can never get mixed up because males and females don't get mixed up. So the Rebbe once asked, that's obvious. You don't need a halacha to tell you that. If the facts don't let the mixing happen, then what do you need the Rambam for? So the Rebbe said he doesn't have a good answer according to Nigla, according to the revealed part of Torah, but according to Chassidus, it's a very strong message. Why do we bring sin offerings? To atone for a sin. But if you look at a chatas and a asham, there are 2 different categories. A chatas, you can only bring for doing a sin by mistake, unaware. An asham, sometimes you can bring for doing a sin purposely. It's the worst type of a sin. You knew what you were doing and you still did it. That's why an asham can only be a male and a chatas just can be a female. Mystically, male and female represent stronger and weaker energies, tougher and softer attitudes. So the asham, in order to atone for a sin that you did on purpose, you have to have a stronger male attitude. You can only bring a male. In other words, part of your tshuva is to be harsh on yourself. How could you do such a thing? Actively go against Hashem's will. When you do a sin inadvertently, what do you tell yourself? Okay, my animal soul had a little lapse. Really I'm good, really I'm fine, really I'm doing okay. You approach it with a more womanly or feminine attitude, therefore the sacrifice is female. But sometimes it's possible conceptually to mix the two. Sometimes you could have a person who does an Avera on purpose, but it's less severe than somebody who does an Avera by mistake. How could that be? Maybe you did an Avera on purpose because of your upbringing, or because you had bad influence around you. And maybe the guy who did the Avera by mistake really could have learned, he could have avoided it. So now you have a scenario where perhaps the guy who did the purposeful sin would need to be spoken to more softly, with a feminine attitude. And the person who did the by mistake sin, he needs the male tough attitude. Nevertheless, says the Rambam, chatas and asham don't mix. Even if mitzad the gavra, even if on the perspective of the person, your sin might be less deserving or more deserving, but the fact of the matter is the korban, the sacrifice that comes for such sins, this one is a male, this one is a female. So they never mix, even in a case where conceptually they're different. That's the pnimius, the more inner dimension of this halacha. Halacha Yud Zayin, v'chol elu hamisarvin b'chayim. In all of these cases, if the animals got mixed while alive, im hikriv hurtza, as we said in the beginning of the chapter, if you ended up bringing them, it's okay. She'ein ba'alei chayim nitchim, because live animals never get rejected. Halacha Yud Ches, this is another type of law that relates to mixed up sacrifices. Behema shenimtzeis mirushalayim va'ad migdal eider, ukemidasa l'chol ruach. Remember, in temple times, different society, they lived differently. Everything was focused around the temple. So if you found an animal in Yerushalayim, anywhere from the center of Jerusalem till what's called Migdal Eider, was an area somewhat outside Jerusalem, and the same radius all around, there's a very big chance that it was an animal designated for a sacrifice. So what do? Im nekeva bas shnasahi, if it's a female in its first year, unfortunately you must bring it into a stall and let it die. Shem achatasi, because it might be a sin offering, and if it's a sin offering and you lost track of it, it has to be killed. This was on chapter 4. Haisa bas shtayim, if it was 2 years old, the female animal, yivi and ashlamim, bring it as a peace offering, v'yavi imal lechem shemotaydahi, but bring bread too, maybe it's Thanksgiving offering. Matzah zachar ben shtei shanim, if you have a male in its second year, ein letakana, you have no way to fix it. Shema ashamhu, v'adayin lekipru ba'alav, maybe it's a guilt offering, which the owners haven't used yet. Matzah zachar ben shana, if you find the male in its first year, maniche at she'ipel b'mum, leave it till it gets a blemish, umevi shtei behemoths tachtav, and bring 2 animals instead. Because there's 2 possibilities. Umasne ve'omer, make a condition, a stipulation, and say, im oila haya za oila tachtav. If it was a burnt offering, the animal that I found, this is oila instead of it. V'im shlamim haya za shlamim tachtav. If it was a peace offering, that this be a peace offering instead of it, your second animal. Umakriv ha'echad oila, unisachav mishal tzibur. You bring one of them as a burnt offering, that's all you have to sponsor. The libations will be sponsored by the communal funds. And the other one, bring it as a peace offering, but bring it with bread. Maybe it was a Thanksgiving offering. What about the original animal which you found and you left to be blemished? You can eat it as it is in its blemished state. Even if it was holy, even if it was firstborn or tithe, you could eat it with a mum. And if it was a Passover sacrifice, maximum, time has passed, and Passover sacrifices after Passover convert to being peace offerings, which you brought. And in its time, everybody will be careful with it. You wouldn't lose a Passover sacrifice. The last possibility that could be, Shema Asham Nazarei Asham Mitzayrahu. Maybe it's a guilt offering for a Nazarite or a person who had saras. Einan Mitzuyin Tamid Lefichach Lechashel. And it's not a common case, so we're not worried about that. Yutes Nisarvu Kadashim B'Kadashim Achar Shanishchatu. If sacrifices got mixed up after slaughtering, just a bunch of meat, you have to eat them with the stricter laws. Nisarvu Pesulei Hamukdashin Bechulin Shnishchatu Ba'azara. If they got mixed in with disqualified sacrifices or regular animals that were slaughtered in a prohibition way in the temple courtyard, to ubar tzurasan v'yetel le'besasreifa, since you might have literally forbidden meat, you have to wait till it passes its potential time frame and then burn it all.
What do you mean to
ubar tzuratan literally means change the form. It's an expression which means let the time frame expire. So if this is a sacrifice that has 2 days, wait 2 days, then burn it. Limbs of a sin offering that got mixed with limbs of a burnt offering. You leave it all till they rot and the time frame passes. And you burn it in temple courtyard where you would burn all disqualified sacrifices, because you can't, it's either a sin offering or a burnt offering, so you have a problem. If a limb of an animal with a blemish, which cannot be offered, got mixed with limbs of other sacrifices, even one limb in 1,000 limbs, they all must be burnt. Even if they all were already offered, and there's only one left, since that might be the blemished one, just burn it in the place where you burn disqualified sacrifices. Cuts of meat from the holy of holy sacrifices that can only be eaten by Kohanim in the temple courtyard on the same day. And they got mixed into cuts of meat of lighter level sacrifices, which everybody could eat in the whole of Jerusalem. Or meat that can be eaten for one day, got mixed with meat of 2 days. You treat it with like a stricter one, eat it in the earlier time frame or at the higher level of sanctity. All sin offering, but one piece contracted ritual impurity, and it mixed with 100 pieces of pure sin offering. Showbread. It's all showbread. One piece became impure. It mixes with 100 other pieces of pure. So fascinatingly, it becomes nullified. Because here, it's not different sacrifices categories. It's not doubts about the sacrifice. They're all the same sacrifice. Just one's impure, one's pure. The impure one can become batel with 100, as we explained in the laws of Truma. Lechem apanim is a kind of Truma also. But if it's one holy piece and 100 regular pieces, not even holy at all, or holy pure showbread with just regular bread, regular matzah, these cannot be nullified. It's like any holy thing mixing with unholy stuff, it all goes to the Kohanim. Same way if Truma mixes into a pile, it all goes to the Kohanim. If sacrifice or showbread mixes with other stuff, it all goes to the Kohanim.